dare great things for Christ. Christ calls us to dare great things. In the marketplace, as well as in the mission field, there has never been a time like the present for the spirit of the Catholic entrepreneur. Now is the time for men and women of great courage and great vision to engage our church and our culture. Now is the time to dare great things. And here is your host as we dare great things, Father Nathan Cromley, the president and founder of the St. John Institute.
If I were to ask you who it is that's responsible for making the world holy, most of you would respond, your priest or your minister or someone who works for the church. While this may be true, what's the place for a business person or a working professional or a stay-at-home mom or even grandparents for that matter? In his letter to priests from 1996, Pope John Paul II makes a compelling case for the special way that lay people can make the world holy too. It's always very inspiring for me to speak with you guys, with professionals, with those who are trying to change the world as a lay person. And it's always inspiring because when I look at you, I see people who are actively engaged in the world of mission. The other day, I was in Southeast Indiana in an adoration chapel for a little parish in the middle of the day. And it was really neat because when you leave the adoration chapel to then go back to your car, they have this big sign up on the glass window pane that you're leaving, of the door you're leaving, and it says, "You are entering mission territory." And I thought that was really clever, right? Because most of the time we don't think that. We're just like, okay, I went to pray, then I go back to the real world, I go back to my normal life. But this parish was making the point that your normal life is a place you've been sent by God in order to evangelize. I thought that was really exciting, to bring the gospel message to as if you were entering into a mission territory. It was an exciting vision. And of course, it's one that's true. We know it. We just don't always think it. And that can really be a problem because if we're divorced from our deep sense of why, if we don't have a real sense of meaning or significance towards what we do every single day, well, then it's going to be really hard to be motivated to do it well. And that's exactly what most people do. We end up checking out of the possibilities that we have to really impact the people and the places around us for God. Or if, even things that come close to God, for like values or things that are genuinely good. It's hard to fight for what you think could make the world better if you're not convinced that any of your efforts will actually pan out. And yet it's just the opposite. If in fact you are convinced and you go into your work life every day, or you attack that home life that you have, or the situation you have in your family, whatever it might be, where you're called to lead, in your classroom, in your hospital, right? And you say, I'm going to go into that setting as if Christ had sent me there to do his work. Right? And the work of God is amazing because, yes, the work of God is that you believe, that Jesus says that himself. And so we want people to obviously come to faith, but people come to faith gradually, often. And anything that we can do to move them closer to faith is also the work of God. Because when you think about it, even the life of a human being, God doesn't immediately come and then just speak his word and people just believe they're in the womb. Little children start dancing in wombs. But that does happen, of course, in the Bible. St. John the Baptist danced when Christ came. But at the same time, almost always, God allows you to be born, receive your mother's smile, be carried in your mother's arms, be reared in a family, right? Like this, of course, this doesn't always happen beautifully, but most of the time it does. And it's certainly the way God wanted it to happen, that you see the sunshine, that you learn the smell of the trees, and that as you grow, you progressively go to higher and higher understandings of what is good. Until that moment happens where these profound questions come to you in life for which God himself is the answer, right? Progressively, God moves you. Well, in the same way, the people around you are still being moved progressively by God. And so our job as Christians who believe is to help people to come to faith by creating a set of conditions in the world where it's easy for people to believe in the love of God. Right? And think about it. There's no better reason why God would have given you your job or sent you into your team, your work team, except to think that, man, if Jesus thought to himself, if I could only have Bob there on that team, if I could only have Jen teaching in that school, if I could, then imagine the good that could be done. Wouldn't it be amazing? If Jen went to her classroom and she went there knowing that she was there sent by God as the one that he chose himself from all time to bring those children to a deeper love for him. It'd be incredible. If Bob were to say, I'm on that team, or Bill was say, I'm going to be doing this engineering project because God wanted me there as his representative. It's just so that I could in any way, shape, or form bring people closer to him. It would change the way that you work. And that's, of course, a good thing, because if it changes the way that you work, it'll also change your mindset about the importance of your life and the impact that you can make in a million different ways for the good. The more that we have a sense of the importance of our role, of our person, of who we are in the plan of God to better the world, the more that we'll fight for what's right. And we'll do everything that we can, and even the small ways, to make the lives of other people better. I think especially in America today, where we have just so many comforts, you go into your house and it's air conditioned. Of course, I'm not complaining. I think it's a marvelous thing, but you can't help but notice at the same time that when you live where it's more comfortable to be inside than it is outside, right? For instance, or where you live where you have everything in your self-contained world. You have your own phone, you have your own internet, you have your own source of information. It's a challenge to then really care enough about the society outside of our lives to really do something, especially when it's sacrificial, right? That motivation to sacrifice for the world just isn't there when your world is extremely comfortable and everything's in good condition, right? It becomes a little bit more compelling when you're struggling with poverty or with other forms of injustice or something like that, but most of us aren't. And so therefore, most of us become complacent. And I'm not sure that complacency is fitting for Christianity. I don't think that Jesus Christ was complacent, and I know that he wasn't telling his apostles and disciples that he was a fan of their complacency either. Remember what he says in the book of Revelation? He says, the hot I can stand, the cold I can stand, but the lukewarm I would spit from my mouth. That's hardly a guy. And then he says, do not think that I came to bring peace upon the world. I did not come to bring peace. I came to bring the sword. And he speaks about the sword of division, that his life will, because being complacent with Christ, you can't be complacent with somebody whose life is love. Love is not complacent. Love does not say it doesn't matter what I do. Love doesn't say let's just let another day go by. Love is like a consuming fire. It's like a hungry fire. It wants to, everything that we do, we want to give to the beloved. When we're actively in love with someone, they're the thing that we think about. They're the thing that we do things for. They focus our life. Just like the life of Christ was focused on the people he was sent to serve and focused on glorifying God the Father. Wouldn't it be amazing if our life's focus was not on ourselves, was literally on the people we worked with, on our bosses, on our constituents, on our classmates? Wouldn't it be just fantastic if we lived a life of love, where every day you went out of that door of your house saying, I've been sent in order to make this world better? You'd have deeper meaning, deeper purpose, deeper drive, and this is what a Christian is supposed to have. We are not supposed to be neutral agents maintaining a complacent world. We're supposed to be agents of the fire of the love of God, there to bring the world up by serving it with our talents. That's the vision of the layperson. It's the vision that John Paul II articulates, giving us 4 different ways that a layperson is supposed to live that out. And I want to talk about that with you.
Would you like to hear more from Father Nathan? Join the St. John Leadership Network and receive a 2-minute glance at the gospel every Sunday morning right to your phone. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
So every Holy Thursday of his pontificate, Pope John Paul II, who was a pope in the Catholic Church, wrote a letter to priests. And he wrote it on Holy Thursday, which is a day in the Catholic Church where we really remember priests because it's the day of the Last Supper, right? So the Pope would write to all the priests in the world every Holy Thursday. And I thought that these letters are just really interesting because they give little nuggets of insight that are applicable for everybody, whether you're a priest or not. I mean, number one, they're just beautiful to read, right? And it's compelling to read. But at the same time, it gives insights here because the priests are called to be the leaders. And I know that priests are different from everybody else, but at the same time, they're the same as everybody else too. It would be like, what could I learn about leadership from business that I could apply to the priesthood? A whole bunch. Or what could I learn about the leadership in the family that I could apply to being a bishop? Well, a whole bunch. As a matter of fact, St. Paul even says, don't let a man become a bishop unless he can manage his own home well. Right? So that the home leadership is literally the criteria given in the Bible for whether or not a man will be a good leader of the church. So, it's the same way. Well, why can't we look at priestly leadership and see some nuggets that we could take out of that for you? That's what I wanted to do here in this series. And in this particular letter coming from 1996, Pope John Paul II begins by talking about the call of the layperson. And I thought this was really interesting because we usually don't think that. So if you're not Catholic, you might not know that term, lay person, but basically it means everybody who's not a priest. So in the understanding of the church, we're all disciples, okay? And yet the priest is a disciple in a special way that's different than the way that a lay person is a disciple. And so there's a lot of commonality. We have the same mission, right? But a priest has special powers that were given to him by Christ. This is the Catholic belief anyway, right? But my point is that when you look at folks who are then dedicated towards evangelizing their culture, that is parents and professionals and grandparents and aunts and uncles and people who aren't priests, well, what is the way that they're supposed to, lead the gospel? We all understand what priests do. Priests get up there from the pulpit, we preach, we make decisions, we have the authority in a parish, right? So we're able to really say, man, our life is a leadership lesson. We are there to make an impact wherever Christ has put us in our parishes for our people. All right, we understand that. So we wear special clothes. We have, and then we have a special title named Father, and our job is to literally go around changing the world for Christ, right? We get that. But what about someone who's not? I remember one time people saying you got the priests who are God's chosen instruments, and then the rest of us who are his unchosen instruments. And I thought, that's not right. That's not a right way to look at it, everybody. But I can understand how you could feel that way, right? Because you just say, it's like that one person who told me, listen, lay people make them, and then priests save them. And I'm just like, oh goodness, that's just so wrong. It's so wrong because it's really undercutting the whole point of this. The role of the priesthood is to serve the lay person, the non-priest, in their function to bring the light of Christ into the darkness, to bring the salt of the flavor of the Holy Spirit everywhere into the world, to permeate the dough like leaven. Christ, he says it himself, a city set up on a hill cannot be hidden. Well, the priest's job is to set the city up on the hill, right? It's to make sure that the lives of everybody that's in his realm of contact shine with the light of Christ. Where? In the darkness, in the places where you've been sent, where non-believers go. It's like through the believer, the church extends the faith. So the priest's job is to take care of believers first, and then, of course, non-believers as well, but firstly the believers, so that the believers can go out and take care of the non-believers. It's like a lot of us have the idea that there's a pyramid out there, and that the priest and the bishop, or you could say your pastor if you're not Catholic, right? The church workers are at the top of the pyramid, and then everybody else is at the bottom, and their job is just to support the top of the pyramid as that person or persons run around, trying to help people to know Jesus. And, there's some validity to that you have to support the priest or the church person. But at the same time, it's so that figure at the top of the pyramid, it's actually supposed to be flipped upside down. And the person at the top of the pyramid, their role is actually supposed to be supporting you to evangelize. So whereas you support the priest or the church worker or the pastor, whoever it is, you support them as a member of their flock so that they can provide the leadership for your church, sure. But the leadership that they provide for the church is supposed to be one that then supports you as you go forth from the church in your mission to bring Jesus into society. It's an inverted pyramid. That's actually the right way of thinking about it. So is there a specific way that we as lay people that we get out there and change the world? And John Paul II says yes. So he begins, this is the Holy Thursday letter from 1996, right? And he just starts off by talking about how special priests are, right? And then in paragraph number 2, he starts talking about how the idea of vocation was proposed by the Second Vatican Council in 3 different ways. And this is something that's new to me. I had never realized this before, but it's found in a document called Lumen Gentium, which is the Latin title for a document in the Second Vatican Council. But it basically says that there the church is saying that there's a vocation of all mankind, there's the Christian vocation, and the vocation to the marriage and family life. Okay, in this context, the priesthood is one of many vocations, one of the many possible ways of following Christ, who in the gospel frequently utters the invitation, follow me. Okay, so the very first thing the Pope does is remind everybody that you're supposed to be following him into, well, your vocation, either as a Christian in society, if you're single, or if you've been called to marriage, into that vocation of marriage. You're following Christ there. He's bringing you there. This is the way by which you're going to be sanctified and the way that you're going to bring sanctity to others, right? It's really a thought for you to consider, right? And so he goes on further, right? And he says that the ministerial priest, by the sacred power he enjoys, molds and rules the priestly people. Okay, so you get that. That might be a kind of a hard translation. I'm not sure if he said rules in the way that we think of it today, but you get the idea, right? That he governs the people of God. Acting in the person of Christ, he brings about the Eucharistic sacrifice, right? That's the Mass for Catholics, and offers it to God in the name of all the people. For their part, now this is the important thing, the faithful join in the offering of the Eucharist by virtue of their royal priesthood. So yes, the priest offers Mass, but the lay people are there too. So they're doing it differently. It's not the same thing. And yet you're participating, you're sharing in that offering. And so for their part, the faithful join the offering of the Eucharist. They likewise exercise that priesthood. So you got both, they join in the Eucharist, and then it says the priest rules and molds the people of God, right? So he governs and then he sanctifies the people. Well, then what do the lay people do? So they join in the Eucharist, and then what do? And he says that the non-priest members of the church, right, the lay people, they exercise that priesthood by receiving the sacraments, by prayer and thanksgiving, by the witness of a holy life, number 3, and number 4, by self-denial, number 5, by active charity. 5 ways that a non-priest lives out their role to sanctify the world. And I want to go into those with you because I think breaking those down makes this very practical for you and gives you focus points for you to understand as you go forth how to live as a lay person of Christ, as someone who's not a priest, actively in the mission field of evangelization.
Would you like to start your Thursday mornings with a scriptural leadership lesson? Join the St. John Leadership Network, where Father Nathan hosts a 30-minute call at 6:30 a.m. in all 4 U.S. time zones. To learn more, go to www.stjohnleadershipnetwork.org/member and join for free today.
All right, so John Paul II really gives us a jewel here. 1996, letter to priests. He talks to us here about the way that non-priests are called by Christ to be missionaries in the world. And he doesn't give this just in some sort of like generic sense. He becomes really specific about it. He gives 5 ways that we are called to lead as people who aren't priests, right? The first is that he says receiving the sacraments. So I know not all of you are Catholic, and so, I respect that, so you don't necessarily have the sacraments. It depends on your denomination and in your understanding of things. But for Catholics, there are 7 of them. And the understanding that we have is that the sacraments represent ways by which we are configured to Christ. right? So in your non-Catholic spirituality, we have the same, final goal, which is sanctification. That is, that our life actually becomes transfigured into a sharing of the life of Christ, right? Participates in the life of Christ. This is really powerful. And so he says that the very first thing that we're called to do is become configured to Christ. Isn't that amazing? So our prayer life, which is then the second thing that he does, prayer and thanksgiving. If you notice, his very first focus is to say that we need to be turned towards God. Now you could say, how is that going to make me a better leader? I'd like to say, how could it not make you a better leader? Like, think about it. If your leader, the person who's influencing your life, is connected to God, how could that possibly be bad? On the contrary, it means that all the leadership that they're giving you, all the influence that they're having on your life is coming from the best of sources and pointing you back towards the best of things. I mean, if your leader isn't leading you from God, well then, based on what are they leading you? And to what are they leading you? Think about it like this. If your spouse that you're married to, if they were connected to God, wouldn't they be a better spouse? Wouldn't their love be better? Wouldn't they be more joyful in the home? Of course they would be. Or think of it with your kids. If your kids are praying every day in the love of God, wouldn't they be more wonderful at home? Of course. You see, it's the same thing with leaders. So the very first thing John Paul II says is, hey, if you are a Christian and you are in the world, first thing you need to do is let God sanctify you. First thing you need to do is be pointed back to him. Prayer, thanksgiving, sacraments, because you need to live your life connected to him. And by so doing, that's the first obligation of any Christian, is to love Christ. It kind of goes without saying. It's even in our name, You can't be a Christian without Christ, all right? So don't even try. Right? So that's the very first thing. 3 things he just gave you. Prayer, by which we therefore communicate to God, lifting up in our lives the world to God. Thanksgiving, which is interesting, to then connect by bringing everything back to God with this spirit of connecting what he made back to him. Just as you gave me this good thing, God, so now I give it back to you in thanksgiving. And then, as he says at the very beginning, receiving the sacraments, letting Christ sanctify you in the ways that, of course, he's given us in the church. And then he goes on. Now, this fourth way is very fascinating. He says, the witness of a holy life. And the reason I say that it's fascinating is because maybe this is just a little pet peeve of mine, right? But I really have a hard time with Christians who don't act like they are, or Christians who are just afraid of being a Christian. We act like the holiness of our life is something that we should be ashamed of instead of witnessing to. Now, you might say, well, we're not really that holy. You don't have to be that holy. You just have to be kind of holy. I mean, any holiness is a good holiness. Okay, guys? Like, don't put yourself like, I've got to be some sort of saint. But I'll give you like a practical example, right? When you let your kids miss mass on Sunday because of a soccer tournament, you're missing an opportunity to, number one, help your kids know that there is God who comes first. And then number two, helping the soccer coach and the whole community know that there are people in the world that believe in God. And literally God says, I only want one morning of one day of the whole week. And we literally can't give that to him. I just think that that's like an opportunity lost. Right? Or if you think about it in your home, when people come to see your home, do they see a cross of Jesus Christ? Do they see a crucifix, a picture of the Virgin Mary? Anything that's there saying that you love God? Well, again, it's an opportunity missed. That's what he's saying. He's like, hey, look, guys, after you conform yourself to Christ, your very first thing is to then say, my way of living needs to be in conformity with Christ. The words that I say, the things that I watch on TV, the way that I dress, these things, well, I mean, like, why wouldn't they manifest the heart? Once my heart is in God, then my body needs to follow my heart. That's what he's saying. And your body is, well, the way you dress, the way you sing, the way you talk, the music you listen to. It's like, live that way, because then people around you, without you even talking about Jesus, they'll notice that there's something different. This person lives, notice he says that. He didn't say holy words or holy proclamation or, taking your Bible and hitting it on people's heads. No, he said a holy way of life, which is even more effective and it's extremely attractive. When people see genuine love, charity, they can't help but be drawn. I'm thinking about Malcolm Muggeridge, who is a person you probably haven't heard of before, but back in the 80s, he was kind of a big deal. He was an English journalist and very well known at the BBC and all that. And he was, basically a self-proclaimed agnostic, just didn't really acknowledge God at all. And then he went to visit Mother Teresa of Calcutta in India. And there's a book that was written about it and a documentary that he made. He wanted to make a movie called Something Beautiful for God. And so he went over to visit this Catholic nun who was going around loving people who were dying. She literally founded what she called homes for the dying destitute, and where these people were brought in from the streets and then loved as they passed away because they were just so sick. And Malcolm Muggeridge asked Mother Teresa, "Why are you doing this?" And she said, "I believe that no one deserves to die without being loved." And so to give that love, she did all this work. Well, Malcolm Muggeridge was so touched by her that he ended up becoming a Christian. And he entered the Catholic Church, as a matter of fact. It's absolutely fascinating. And he said it was because he saw in her the love of God. That's what we mean, right? He goes on then, he talks about self-denial and active charity. Right? So here you get the real understanding of things. We work in this world by bringing the love of God to it. Just like Mother Teresa did that for the dying destitute. Well, so you're called to do it by building bridges and doing civil engineering and teaching classes of special needs students and coaching swimming and everything else that you do. Right? I do it with the love of God in me. And therefore, everywhere that I go, I bring that love of God. And if I have that in my heart, I have meaning for my life, significance to what I do. I have a transcendent value that drives me, and I'm literally doing something that's so valuable for the world. I'm saving it with Jesus Christ. This is the vocation the Pope lays out for you, and it's no small thing. It's actually the tip of the spear. Everything else that the church does is to support that. To support great conversations in living rooms, to support great education choices, to support people who push things forward for Christ, because that's what his leaders do everywhere and anywhere they can.
Dare great things for Christ.
Share your feedback with Father Nathan. Send us an email at communications@stjohninstitute.org. That's communications@stjohninstitute.org. And visit www.stjohninstitute.org and sign up for our newsletter to receive updates from Father Nathan.